And we're back. What's good? I'm back on the camera. It's your boy The Rise, also known as Jefferson. I mean, primarily known as Jefferson, but actually, well, hold on. Okay. So, I guess first thing off the bat, I'm not gonna try to edit this because knowing myself, I know that I don't really. I mean, I like to edit, but it makes the task so much harder. So, like, whatever this turns out, it's gonna turn out. At least for this video. Um, Second, my brother said I look like the motherfucker from Step Brothers. I don't know if that's the case, but y'all let me know. Um, and yeah, today's video, I got my little notebook to keep me on track. It's gonna be about allowing my creative spirit to manifest. And I guess there's a lot of nuance in this, but I feel that recently I've been feeling kind of stuck, but also more like confused about how I want to I guess like move forward with my creative practice and how I want to organize things because I think so much of making and so much of creating, especially nowadays, also means kind of like at least for me thinking about it in like in a persona in a like an alter ego in the sense of I'm Jefferson, I'm a being that can do many things. But right now on this channel, the Rise Productions is, let's say, like my primary creative project and what I've been it's been fueling me and allowing my creativity to be expressed in a certain way, right? And I don't know, it's just like even though like it feels that I'm still like pretty early on this journey, it feels like in some ways I need to like stay consistent. And at the same time, it feels that I've almost spread myself too thin where even now again becoming confused of like what I want to do. And I guess just laying out the land and who for the people that I've been following, um the rise. So I guess starting like let's say 2020 is when I would say like the rise and the rise productions really started, right? It started off as me wanting to express myself. I might post this video, I don't know, but I before the rise, that chapter of like my creative life, I was like more of, you can say like I had a very athletic life. So maybe that will come out soon. I made a video about that and kind of leaving that athletic life into this creative life in the different kind of creativity because you know athletics still has its own creativity, but from like maybe athletic life to an artistic life, I wanted a different outlet, and the rise was this idea of process, not perfection. But now I kind of think about more about practice, not perfection, and with sports, a lot of it is very results driven and very competitive, which I think is it's good and it produces certain kind of actions. But I think what I was looking for after that chapter in my life was something where I didn't really have to worry about the results and like one upping anybody else and just really focusing on what I want to do and like what I want to express. And if people appreciate it and enjoy it, they do, and I can share that with other people. That's what I love to do. But if not, then you know, moving on, right? So that's the kind of like the mentality I had going in. But I remember I had this conversation with the homie DJ, and he like interviewed me for a class project he was doing. Hold on, I'm also gonna be drinking tea. It's like a mint tea that my mom got. I'm also back home. This is also, let's say, like my childhood bedroom as well. And I feel like when I go home, I get in this like space of like reflection, and I guess I'll get into it a little bit too, but I've been doing like my master of design and I'm in my second year and my final year, and I feel like the past like fall semester coming out of it, create, make. So back home intentionally, so I've been trying to like not be creative, quote unquote, like not be a producer as much and just be a consumer in some ways and just be on this kind of repair rest vibe. Um, where was I? But yeah, there was this aspect of practice, not perfection. But yeah, I was talking to when I was talking to DJ in this interview, and also if you look at my SoundCloud, it was like, I think the song's called Bass and Sub Bass. I forget what it's called, but I ended up like using our audio recording from that conversation. I made a song out of it, which is honestly, now I think about it, kind of like underlays a lot of my making in music and sound stuff. But I remember in that conversation, he was asking me how did the name The Rise come from, and I remember telling him that, well, or how did the name The Rise Productions come, right? And I guess this idea that I wanted The Rise for my Instagram, but The Rise was taken. So like I was also really at that time and still am a really big fan of the Blaze Productions, and like I really loved how they were so like multimedia, right? They were, and like they allowed their creative spirit to like manifest in different ways, right? They make music, but they also like are film directors and you know produce stuff in that sense, right? So like they are able to kind of keep those two different sides under this whole umbrella as the Blaze. So like for me, when I was telling him that, I was like, that's kind of also the intention behind the Rise Productions, because I want it to be a space that can grow, that can facilitate and have underneath different aspects of my creativity outside of just music. Maybe it's everything might in some ways be music adjacent or sound adjacent, but yeah, I definitely wanted it to be, always wanted it to have like this kind of like wider reaching net, right? But then, so like, I guess where the confusion has started to come from me, and it was when I started to, and I think, and there's a different ways I'm thinking about it, but I think it's, I guess I'll just explain it. So basically, after finishing like my undergrad and doing like my, starting to DJ and making music and the Rise production growing in that lens, I started to do like radio and the Rise Radio, which for the most part is like still on the Rise Productions account, but then it has its own account now. But I think in some ways like it still fits under the Rise Productions, and it still like makes a lot of sense. And I started to post like those radio clips on the Rise Productions, and to me, I thought maybe I'm getting more confusing, but I think ultimately probably no one really cares, but I was overthinking stuff. But then when I came to do my master's of design, so I'm currently doing my master's of design, I think I said this already, at Emily Carr University of Arts and Design, after like the first few months, I realized that I needed, like I've started to get these different ideas. I wanted to post more things that didn't necessarily, for me at the time, I didn't think about it as something that could be posted under the Rise, because it was like very much like on this like different school of thought of like design, curation. It's like really was born, and these different ideas were born out of me coming to school here, right, at Emily Carr. So I was thinking like, oh, maybe I'll make a different account. And then I was in New York with my siblings for like, we did like a siblings trip. And what came to me was kinesthetics, because it's like this idea of kin, like the first part of kinesthetics is kin, collective. Or like when you think about kin, it's like your brethren, it's like your family, it's the collective, right? So I was like, oh, collective. And then aesthetics, I'm really interested in like aesthetics in terms of looks. But when I think about aesthetics, I think more about the senses, because aesthetics really deals with the senses and how you sensuously appreciate stuff, right? So for me, it was like, oh, kinesthetics, collectively driven, aesthetically motivated. And then I was like, okay, I can put my music and my podcast and whatever into the Rise Productions, the Rise Radio, and then any kind of design, curation stuff can be put into kinesthetics, right? So then I was doing that for a while, and then maybe like 4, 5, 6 months after that, I was like, okay, like I want to start like thinking more about my work, my creative practice, also in a way of like business, and just thinking about how I can, I wouldn't say necessarily, I mean, again, like I'll get into this at the end, when I think more, talk more about, a little bit about branding. But I guess I always just trying to think about like, okay, I want to start like taking my creative practice seriously and like incorporate it and like become a sole proprietor, and like think about how do I want to like bring everything under like one umbrella, right? So then I was like, okay, I have the Rise Productions on one side, that's my music, that's the DJing side, sometimes video, and then I have kinesthetics, it's like the design, it's the curation stuff. And then I'm like, okay, so these are like the two different like pieces, and then the hierarchy, like the one that sits above it, would be Joma Studios. And in my head, I'm like, okay, Joma Studios is like the peak, it's like the dad, like the parent, you know, and then the Rise is one offshoot of it, kinesthetics is another offshoot of it, and then the Rise with the Rise Productions breaks out into like the Rise Radio, and then I had kinesthetics, and like, so then, and I was like running with this for a while, and I ended up getting like a website, because I already had a website for the Rise Productions, but then I was like, got a website for Joma Studios, got a website for kinesthetics, bought the domains. I was like, okay, this is it, this is, you know, this is what I'm doing and whatever. And then I guess flash forward now, like I've been, again, like, and I guess like I kind of noticed this a little bit, that in some ways I think I sometimes overcomplicate things. And I think that kind of goes into like maybe more of like my philosophy I'm trying to really implement in my life. Like I do less is more, but kind of thinking about reduction and like 1, 2, 3, and like really thinking that things can really be one very soul strong thing. Maybe it can be two, like duality, or it can be like that 3 trifecta. I think when you get into like more complexity, it almost just really like you either just break off and let that be something else, or you kind of really reduce and like add things together. Because I think myself at the moment, like I'm saying this, I was getting confused like throughout the last like 6 months now, like before coming to this point. I'm like, okay, do I post on the kinesthetics? Do I post on the Rise? Is this, you know, is this is this combined post? Does this go here? And like I was really kind of confused. And then it was also like kind of maintaining 3 different accounts and thinking about also like the viewership. And so I was just getting really lost. And then it came all to a head, honestly, last night. I was like working with my mom. She's accountant by trade, so she was teaching me this like one software about how to just keep track of my books, right? I'm trying to like get that organized, because again, like I think being an artist, being a creative, there's also like a business aspect of it, and it doesn't mean you have to like sell yourself out, but you should know how much you're spending, right? You should know where your money's going, how much money's coming in. That's the basics, right? But then I was just even just like as simple as like, what email do I put, right? Do I put the Rise email? Do I put Kinesthetics email? Do I make another one for Joma Studios or something like this, right? Because up until this point, I only have a Joma Studios website, but I don't even have an Instagram account. I don't know. So it was just like so many different like touch points, and like if I was getting confused, I can't even imagine how much other people are getting confused. And like as much as like my parents were like, and my mom and my dad were like, like like you should focus on branding, like you should really, and I'm like, oh no, like I know what I'm doing. But now I'm really thinking about it, and it kept me up last night. I'm like, damn bro, like if I'm like so confused about what to do and like where to post, like imagine other people who don't even know me, that has not even invested a iota of time into like my world. How do I expect them to engage with it, right? And it kind of got me thinking that like, okay, I really need to like simplify. And again, so getting into like this idea of like reduction. And when I think about reduction, I don't think about it in like the minimalistic sense, right? Oh yeah, I don't know what I said. This is like mint tea or something like this. Very good. But yeah, I think about it not in the sense of like minimalism and reductivism, like that kind of like really want to get rid of all like what's the word again? Like the ornaments. That's not really what I'm necessarily saying. When I think about reduction, I'm really inspired by food, right? And like cooking and this kind of stuff. And my design master's is in like an interdisciplinary program. So I think that's where a lot of it comes from too. It's like I want to like really pull from these different things to kind of help me, figure out this new knowledge body I want to kind of attack or discover or whatnot. When I think about cooking and reduction in cooking, when you think about, I'm reducing a sauce, right? This idea of reducing something is not getting rid of ornament. It's about like letting things go to like let what's left to be like stronger, like let it to be more flavorful and more intense. And that's what I think about reducing, is like when you have too much going on, it's like everything becomes pretty weak, right? But it's like when you can kind of like reduce it to like the core, and like reduce it even like one thing that's really strong, right? And then that becomes so much more intense and like so much more present, and then people can just remember one thing, right? Because again, like I'm an artist, I want to make what I want to make. I don't care who listens, who watches, who views, but at the same time, I also want to be able to like do this at different levels in different places and like share this with many more people. So it also does help to have some sort of thing people can remember and to hook upon and to share with other people as well. So that's where it's like, okay, there has to be some kind of focus, right? And that's where I guess where I'm coming to, and like where I see this my practice now, is this idea of like, okay, I want the Rise Productions, and this is going to be posted on the Rise Productions, to be like the core, right? To be, my creative outlet, right? And anything that I make can go there, right? So like if you start seeing me post design shit, and I don't know why I'm even telling you this, because I don't feel like I need to like justify myself, but like I'm gonna start just posting design shit, posting creation shit, posting whatever I want on the Rise Productions Instagram, on the YouTube, on the face, like on the website. And of course, like I can like find order within the Rise Productions, right? Like I have the Rise Radio, and like even just like I thought about, if it's just a little like detail about like the progression of like the naming convention, because I think there's something important about naming conventions in terms of again, branding. But before, like my Instagram account used to just be like one word, the Rise Productions, right? And then I had like the Rise Radio, or I don't think I even made the Rise Radio at the point. It was just the Rise Productions. And I was thinking about, I want to make the Rise Radio account, because I think I wanted to kind of like put a new page, just so that if I post a lot more on that page, like at least there's like a home for it. And then also I'm thinking about like growing the Rise Radio outside of just like me making the radio shows for it. So I also wanted like a place where other people can post and stuff like this. So then I was thinking, okay, maybe then the Rise, it should be the Rise _ Productions, and then the Rise _ Radio, and then anything else can grow upon it can be the Rise _ whatever, right? And the Rise is like the core, and then you have these different things kind of growing out. So like that's like kind of how I started to think about the rise. But then I kind of forgot about that almost, and I started doing kinesthetics and Jomo Studios. And again, like I love those ideas, I love those names, and I think sometimes I get really like excited about ideas and really want to like do it and really like go into action. And I think it's a good thing sometimes, but then I feel like sometimes maybe I don't let like ideas settle and let to see what like sticks and see what doesn't. And I think maybe if I gave myself more time with ideas and like see like actually if they do have the sticking power that I like maybe once hoped for, maybe I wouldn't be in these situations where I'm spending money on domains, spending money on. But at the same time, and that's why I'm not faulting myself, is because I know myself that I need to try these things. Like if I have these ideas, I need to like at least attempt it. And I think by attempting it and by doing what I've done, I've at least now shown myself in a very practical and a very tangible way why maybe that direction is not the best for me, right? So yeah, this idea just that things can just grow out of the rise and let the rise itself grow. And that's where I'm coming back to like the whole idea with like allowing my creative spirit to manifest, is that I want the rise productions to manifest in different ways, right? I want to feel safe and feel okay to like let it be music and very like classical, or not even, and it's funny how I'm saying classical, but like traditional like dance music, like four on the floor stuff, like if I want to post that stuff. But also I can post some weird experimental stuff, and I can like in the future I and coming up I like have ideas that I want to like start doing more listening rooms and like finding different ways that I want to present my music that work with me, right? And just I guess like yeah, like I always tell people this, but also taking my own advice of like really asserting my own difference in the world and being like okay with that, and knowing that like my unique background and upbringing and culture and you know who I am really gives me my own edge. And as soon as I recognize that, then you know I'm gonna be good, I'm gonna be okay, you know. So I think that's kind of like where I'm at. And then I guess like the final point and the idea that I kept kind of mentioning throughout this idea of branding and thinking about how to I don't know, I'm thinking about how I can do branding in a way that doesn't feel icky, right? Because I don't know, for some reason I just feel that when I think about branding, especially in this 2024, almost 2025, it feels like, oh, I just want to sell something and I want to be popular. And that's not really my intention nowadays. You know, it's not, I mean, again, like I want to share my things. I want it to go out in the world, but I don't want to like do that in exchange for me just like following trends or just like doing what I think is like popular. But maybe what I'm doing right now is going to be popular because I'm doing it, but I don't want that to be like my only intention or my only kind of action for doing something or my only reason for doing something, right? And I'll be honest, I was like literally up in this bed like last night. I was just like, I don't know, I couldn't sleep. You know, I ended up doing some yoga or whatever. But I literally just on ChatGPT I start talking. I'm like, yo, I need some help. And I just like explain my situation. And like they gave me this really nice point about like thinking about branding. And I'm like, oh, so true. And it was like this idea that like you don't have to think about branding so much as like selling yourself, but more about like telling a story, right? Like literally, like again from that perspective. And I think about it like taking my own knowledge now, like taking the some of ChatGPT, but my own knowledge and knowing I did like a media law class and like thinking about the history of like and also like copyright law and like trademarks and stuff and like the idea around branding and like also design history now. But the idea around branding really was this space of like when things became more industrialized, there was like this or even before around that time, but this idea that like you wanted to show consumers like that your product is like would stand the test of time, and that you know that if you get something from here it's going to be like something that's good, right? Like it was like really a thing so that other people would know who you are and like know like what you can offer, and they can like see that and they can see that anywhere and they can like trust that, right? And I think it's morphed and it's changed because so many products and so many different things. So it's like, how can you differentiate yourself? But really, I think I want to kind of take it back to this kind of maybe even before what I was saying, but kind of this space of storytelling. It's like it's not about just like making a sticker. It's about like making a T-shirt, but it's like what story do I want to tell, right? If my thing is about practice, not perfection, maybe then it's about me making something that might not have any commercial appeal, but it's like, oh, I want this piece to tell a story, right? Like for example, I'm really interested in this idea of for my radio show I do at B-Side Radio Synesthesia. I'm thinking about this idea, and maybe I'm gonna burst a bubble, and that's a whole nother topic of like saying ideas too early. But I was like, oh, maybe I want to like do like some kind of like fridge magnets, and like since each episode to a different color, each magnet to a different color, and I can, right? But it's like maybe that's not as commercially appealing as like a t-shirt, right? But at the same time, I'm like, okay, but and it may not even have any logo per se, but I'm like, okay, this is something that tells my story and like something that people can look at if they're on the fridge, on the desk or whatever, and that might resonate more with them. So like okay, thinking about that, and but then maybe it's like since my story and what I'm thinking about and believing in when it comes to like the design stuff and like kinesthetics and like like I'm thinking a lot about repurposefulness, you know, or like just repurposeful and just like using things in a different way and like kind of reuse and stuff. So like maybe it's like the magnets also need to be made out of material that's not new. That's something that I find like at thrift stores or find some kind of like repurposing things, thinking about like that way. So like that's again like through the making of it, through the like promotion of it, right? Even if it's like, oh, if I'm posting it, maybe it's like I like just put the magnets around like different light posts around the city, and it's like, oh, if you find one, you can take one. You know, like now, oh, that's a good idea actually. Anyways, but yeah, it's just this aspect of like what is like genuinely true to your purpose and like your aspect of being an artist, and it's like thinking about it, like how can I tell my story in a unique way, right? And like thinking of yourself as an artist, as a musician, as a DJ, you know, as a creative director, as a designer, as a curator, but also as a storyteller. And I think ultimately it's like how you connect with other people, other humans is through stories. So just remember that. I think this is as much for me. It's honestly, this is all for me, but also for whoever is going to watch this. And yeah, I don't know if I'm talking fast. If I'm not going to try to edit this. I'm actually not going to edit this. I'm really going to just going to like on my phone, probably just upload this right now. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. I don't think I have anything else to say really. And I guess maybe the last thing to tie it up with like what's gonna happen then maybe with kinesthetics and then Joma Studios. And it's against this like this idea of sunk costs, right? And it's like although like I spent money on it, I think again I needed to do those things to understand that maybe that's not the direction I wanted to go. I needed to make that jump to then say, hey, I want to actually redirect my energy into like the Rise Productions and still grow this out and let it grow itself and be what it needs to be, right? So that's like the first thing. But yeah, so what am I gonna do with kinesthetics? So like even just something as simple as like, oh, I just changed the bio in kinesthetics. If you look now, it's just gonna say, I haven't changed it to this new one itself, but it's gonna say a Master of Design thesis by Jefferson Alade. I just like tagged my main account because ultimately when I think about what kinesthetics is, like it was this something that came out as a need for me to post stuff about what I was working on in design school, right? And it can just be like that. It doesn't have to be like this whole like elaborate thing. It can just be, hey, and what I want to change the bio now too is going to be say Master of Design thesis documentation by Jefferson Alade, right? Seeing it as just like this box that I documented with, and like now like mainly what it's just been like a blog post, right? And like on my website, kinesthetics is mainly a blog post, right? So it's like, okay, it's just going to be that, and maybe it doesn't grow, and after I'm done like the master's program, maybe it just gets pushed to the side. Not pushed to the side, but it just like stays like it is. Like that Instagram account, that website is what it is for what it was, you know, and then kind of thinking about it like that more than like it needing to grow. And I have a whole other thing about like not necessarily needing to be professional at everything, and that's a whole other day. I think I want to talk about more about that aspect of like my design journey and like now that I'm almost done the master's where I'm at with that, but that could be for another day. Anyways, if you want to see that, actually, yeah, what people do, comment, like, subscribe. Honestly, I don't care if you do. But yeah, peace.